All right, here's a good question where they're asking you to find the x-intercepts for this function. Another name for that is you could be looking for the zeros of the function. And I'm going to show you 4 ways to do that. And you want to sort of pick from the factor, and you want to pick one of those ways. But you should be good at doing the other 2 as well. And you could use those to check. And so to solve for the x-intercepts, you set f of x to 0. So I have 0 is equal to 2x squared plus 7x minus 4. Now I need to solve this quadratic equation. So to solve the quadratic equation, that's where I can give you 4 different ways of doing that. What I like to do is just to not group factor, but just to guess and check. And so I'm just going to put my 2 brackets here. Since this is 2x squared, I'll split it into a 2x here and an x there. And then the 4, I'm going to split into a positive 4 here and a negative 1 there. Because negative 1 times 4 gives me a negative 4. And 2x times x gives me a 2x squared. Now I check to see whether I got the 7x that I wanted in the middle. So I'm just going to FOIL the whole thing. So 2x times x, 2x squared, knew that. 2x times a positive 4 is a positive 8x. Negative 1 times x is a negative 1x. And negative 1 times 4 is a negative 4. Notice the first term and the last term are correct. And then I just subtract these 2, and this is where I check to see if I'm right. 8 take away 1 is a positive 7. Therefore, this factorization is correct. Okay, so since it's correct, let me just write it down again. 2x minus 1 and an x plus 4. Since that factorization is correct, now I can use a 0 property because I'm multiplying 2 things, and so each of them have to be equal to 0. So I can write 2x minus 1 equals 0 and x plus 4 is equal to 0 and solve each of those equations. So I'll add 1 to both sides, 2x is equal to 1, then I'll divide both sides by 2. So x is equal to half is one of my answers. And then here I'll subtract 4 from each side. So I get x is equal to negative 4. So that's one way you can solve that equation. Another way to solve the equation, let me just start from here. 2x squared plus 7x minus 4 is by using the AC method, and it involves group factoring. So you basically multiply the 2 times the negative 4, so that gives me a negative 8. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to a negative 8 and add to a 7, positive 7. So if I have 8 and negative 1, those multiply to a negative 8, and they also add to 7. So now, instead of putting it right into brackets, I split this middle term up. So I split that middle term, so it'll be 2x squared, and then instead of 7x, I use these 2 numbers with that x. So it'll be a plus 8x minus 1x minus 4 equals 0. And then I can group factor. So I group factor those. I think I can take out a 2x. That leaves me with an x plus 4. The next ones, I can't take anything out, but I always take out what's in front of the x there. So I'm going to take out a negative 1, and that'll leave me with an x plus 4. And then here's a term, and here's a term. They each share an x plus 4, so I can factor that out to the front, and I'm left with 2x minus 1. And notice now I have the exact same thing as I have over there. And I would finish that like that. Okay, a third way of doing that, so this is first way here, second way. A third way of doing that is just using the quadratic formula. Okay, so the quadratic formula is x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and my a is this, my b is this, and my c is a negative 4. So let's plug those things in. And like I always do with any equation, I just put in brackets wherever there's a variable, and then I'll plug it in a second. Okay, So my b is 7, and this would be a 7. My a is a 2, and my c is a negative 4. And at the bottom, my a is a 2. Okay, so to simplify, this will be a negative 7 plus or minus square root. 7 squared would be 49. 4 times 2 is 8, times 4 is 32. Negative times negative, so it would be positive 32. All over 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so I have x equals minus 7 plus or minus the square root of that would be 81. Oh, nice. All over 4. Minus 7 plus or minus the square root of 81 is 9 over 4. And now I've got two equations that I can solve. So I can go x equals minus 7 plus 9 over 4. And the other one's negative 7 minus 9 over 4. This one, minus 7 plus 9 is 2, so that's 2 over 4, which simplifies to a half. It's one of my answers. This will be a minus 16 over 4, which when you divide gives you negative 4. Let's just compare and make sure they're the same. Yep, they're the same as what I got up here. Okay, and then the last way to do this would be to just graph it. And let me try that. Let me insert a decimals thing here. Okay, and I'm going to graph 2x squared plus 7x, 7x minus 4. There. And I want to check to see where it crosses the x-axis. And in decimals, I can just tap there. So at negative 4, that'll be one of the solutions. And the other solution will be 0.5, or that's the same as a half. And if you look at the solutions that we got there, they were the same. So a half and negative 4. So there's 4 ways that you can solve for the x-intercepts of that function. Hopefully that helps.